Hello, Brovs. We're back with Cawdor by Robinson Jeffers, the 1928 title poem narrative of this collection. 10. Farah's moan became vocal. She flapped the hurt arm, the hand lying still and hooked, the marbled flesh working between the shoulder and the elbow. Michael remembered her eagle, in the fresh of its wound, waving the broken flag. Another one of Hood's rifle shots. Cawdor gripped the shoulder quiet with his hand and clinked in the basin. From his right hand the small red splinter of bone he had fished from the wound. Farah's eyelids, that hung half open on arcs of opaque white, widened suddenly and fluttered shut and stood wide open, the liquid pools of night in the rayed gray rings, dilating and contracting like little hearts. Each sparked with a minute image of the lamp above them. She tongued her lips and the dry teeth and moved her head. This must be life, this hot pain. Oh, the bad hunter. I fail in everything, like my father. Cawdor looked sideways, to place in his mind the strips of a torn sheet laid ready, and smooth straight sticks of pine wood, kindling, fetched from the kitchen. He pressed a ragful of pungent liquid to the wounds' mouths. Farah lay quiet, but Michael trembled to see her lips retract from the teeth, and hear the teeth creaking together. Then Farah whispered, "Horse liniment, of course you would. It burns." But Cawdor answered, "Hold the lamp, Michael. George, hold her quiet." He gripped with his hands the shoulder and the upper arm. Then Farah, "Oh God, oh no, no, no. I'll tell you anything." The ends of the fracture were heard touching, but she, writhing her body, whipped over in George's and Concha's hands. Cawdor held without failure, but her movement baffled him. The ends of bone were heard slipping. He shifted his grasp and said to the others, "Loose-handed fools, hold firm." But Farah, straining her chalky and diminished face, the earth stain still unwashed on her cheek, clear of the pillow. "Oh, please, dearest, I'll not hide anything. I'm not to blame." His mind was fixed on his work, yet even while his muscles were setting themselves against her, words entered his understanding. His grip relaxed. He looked at her face. The eye stared bright terror, but the mouth attempting a fawning smile. "I'll tell you everything, dearest, but don't torture me. I thought I had tasted torture before. How little I knew." Her teeth chattered together, and she said, "He forced me. Hood forced me. He threw me down under the laurel tree and stopped my mouth with his hand, so that I couldn't be your wife anymore, darling. But I never loved him. I only tried to be killed. Oh, his face is like a N-words. I'm not going to say it. George, save me. Michael," he sighed. "You lie. Be quiet." "Darling," she pleaded, "I feel pain so much more than you understand. I can't bear pain. Bear pain. I am not made like the people you're used to." He wavered his head as if a fringe hung over the eyes and bent to the wound. But I only tried to be killed. He muttered, "I don't kill women. And Farah, you'd be so kind." Oh, but the darkness was sweet. And feeling his hands, "Oh, Concha," she cried, "I've told him everything, and yet he'll hurt me. Dear Concha, pray to him for me. He used to love you, and I have never been mean to you because of that. Concha." Then Cawdor suddenly turned to the Indian woman. "Is it true, what she says?" But Michael, No. Her mind, she stammered. "Gone wrong. Ah, you coward." "Farah, and what part," Cawdor said, "had you in the play?" "By God, you all." "When?" he said hoarsely to Farah. "Before he died," she answered, her breath hissing in little pulses. He gathered his strength and said, "Out, Michael." And when she had gone, "Was it in this room or his?" She answered, "Under the laurel tree. He threw me down. I was not to blame more than a murdered man is." George said, "She is lying. Her madness is fear of pain. She is sick. Though I've been played for the fool of the world, I know more than that. They make lies for pleasure, but not get killed for pleasure. You sick whore, does it hurt? Here is a different bed from the brown leaves and the panting dog." Her face looking no bigger than a broken doll's on the pillow, answered, I knew you'd kill me. I didn't think torture. Why must I suffer alone? If I am to blame, a little is he not rich with blame? He has got away, I suppose. I swear by God I never consented to him. It was all violence. Violence! Have pity. No pity? Sweetheart, I never called you before. Sweetheart, have mercy on me. He stood as if to go out of the room. He was heard breathing, and slowly his hands crept to his throat. He turned and came back and said, It is not to punish you. I must set the bone. You can't stay here and be kept. You'll need both arms to live with. I will use all gentleness, but you lie still. It will be done in a moment. I'll send for the doctor, but when he comes, it will be too swollen perhaps for mending. Indeed, I have other business. People take pain like bread when their life needs it. After it is set, the ache will quiet. You'll sleep. Michael, outside the door, heard her screaming and went in. But then she had fainted, and Cawdor worked more easily. He bound the arm and set the splints, and bound it again, and passed the leather belt about her body to fasten it against her side. He looked then at her face, the dark lashes lying still, the parted white lips penciled at the borders with fine blue lines. Meek as a child's after the turn of fever, folds its weakness in sleep. Concha prepared to bathe the face, but Cawdor let her alone. Let her have the poor mercy while it lasts. Come, George, I'll help you saddle. He'll come sooner for you than another. He spoke quietly, but leaving the room, he walked against the wall by the door and spread his hands both ways to feel the door frame before he went out. He ran and found Hood's room empty. Before he went with George to the stable, I think it has cleared, he said in the dark. Aren't the stars out? He saw the red star of Hood's fire on the rock. Take your pick of the horses. I must go back and warn the women. She will wake in delirium and strain the bandages loose. I didn't speak of that. That I remember. That I remember. Good night, he said eagerly. He turned. Then George went down alone, but Cawdor up the hill to the rock, as one tortured with thirst toils up the sand hills to the known rock spring. When he issued from the oaks on the ridge of the steep neck of air-crumbled granite, the canyon redwoods were a strain of black shade in the pit below. The gleam-powdered sky soared out of conception. The starlight vastness and steepness were narrow to him, and no wind breathed. He was like one threading a tunnel with anguish hunger of the air and light, all the arrows of desire strung to their heads on the pale spark of day at the end. So all the needs of his life hung on the speck of humanity by the red embers on the rock dome. It hurt him, and twitched and stood up. He made in his mouth and waterless throat the words, "Come down," but no sound issued. He came nearer and said, "What did you steal? Come down." Hood screamed, "Keep off." The same panic of brainless fear returning, with the horror of his own cowardice. How could he bear to run? But how could he bear to stand? He imagined Farah had died. His very innocence of evil made the avenger unbearable. One of those hands could break his body. He snatched his rifle and stood on the other side of the embers and sobbed, "Stop there. By God, if you come near, I'll fire. Keep off your hands. I'm not hiding. I'll answer the law, not you. I can't. Keep off. Oh, oh," for Cawdor blindly came through the fire. Hood, with the rifle at his waist, unshouldered, flung up the muzzle and shot in the air over his father's head. At the flash, Cawdor felt a bright fear, not of death, but of dying mocked, overreached and outraged, as a fool dies, explode on his mind like light breaking on blindness, so that the body leaped and struck, while the mind, astonished with hatred, stood still. There had been no choice, nor from the first any form of intention. He saw Hood's body roll away from the fire like a thing with no hands. He felt in the knuckles of both his hands that both had been bruised on bone. He saw Hood's body twist on the fall of the dome over the precipice, and hands like weak flames scratch at the starlight rock. Then one sharp moment's knife edge, a shadow of choice appeared. For all passed in a moment. He might have dived prone and clutched after the hands with his hands. More likely gone down the granite slide into the gulf with the other. But the choice had no consciousness, and in a moment, no choice. There was no cry. The curving hands scrabbled on the round of the rock and slipped silently down into so dreadful a depth that no sound of the fall, nothing returned. Mere silence, mere vanishing. Cawdor could hear the water whispering below, and saw the redwood forest, a long, irregular stain, in the starlit gorge bottom, but over the round of the rock it was not possible to see the foot of the rock. A little steady breeze blew curving up over the granite verge from the night's drift in the chasm. He turned and walked stealthily away, yet firmly, feeling no horror, but only a hollow, unbearable sadness. But Hood had earned the death he had got. Not that he'd used violence in adultery, that was incredible. The woman had lied. But the crime, however invited, had no forgiveness. Not even in death. Women are not responsible. They are like children. Little children grown lewd. Men must acknowledge justice, or their world falls piecemeal to dirty decay. Justice had been performed. He felt the sapping, unbearable sadness a little lightened, so muttered, "Justice, justice, justice." But the third time of saying it, the word was pith of meaning and became useless. He had come halfway to the house and there remembered the things left on the rock. He returned. Only his knowledge of what lay at the foot prevented him then from casting himself down. Nor could he cast the rifle, the silly rifle that Hood had loved, for fear of its falling on the poor damned face. He stood between the blanket roll and the rifle, beside a few burnt sticks and scattered red coals on the bulge of the rock. "Well, I have killed my son. Whether he continued living or quit living, it would be a pity. Michael should know. Quit because it hurts?" He thought he was not the make to do that. His recent real temptation appeared a contemptible flourish of play acting. "Well, I have killed my son. He needed killing." The woman's story of the rape was now believed. It had become needful to believe her story. I will take these and bury them with him. When he'd again gone under the oaks, he heard one coming up the dark path. A moment of stupid horror, he dreamed it was Hood, coming to claim the rifle. But Michael, no doubt, Michael. He laid the things he carried into the darkness of the oaks by the path, and hardened his mind to meet Michael. Meet whom? It brushed against the stiff leaves like something broken that crept and rested, with no terror but pity going down in the dark to meet it. He heard it snort and stamp hooves. A stray horse plunged from the path. "God damn you," he said, and a voice answered from down the path. "Hood, is that you?" She had been coming up the rock, and the strayed horse drifting ahead. She said, "One of the horses. I guess it's gone. Oh, Hood, Farah has said frightful. Where are you?" She cried sharply. "Who is that?" The things were true, he answered. All true. He heard her stop, and he seemed to feel her trembling. "Where's Hood?" she said in a moment, trembling. "What have you done?" "Nothing," he said in his heart. "Well, I have killed him." He possessed his voice in quietness and said, "I came to ask him the truth, and he has confessed. It was all true." She sobbed and said, "What have you done with him?" "Nothing," he answered indifferently. "He ran when I came. A guilty conscience, Michael. He has done a thing never forgiven." He had reached her now. In the starless night of the oaks, he saw the gleam of her face retreating, she moving slowly backward before him. He said, like the scut of a deer, "What?" "When I came, he streaked up the hill into the starlight. How did you make him confess?" "Oh, Michael, a guilty conscience. That does it. You know he wasn't a coward by nature. Not a damn coward. I saw him run like a rabbit scut between the hill and the stars. Come up to the rock and call him. I thought I heard a gunshot," she faltered. "I was in the house with, then I went out." "A gunshot?" "No. Come up and call him. Perhaps he'll come down. I promise you not to touch him. Come up and call to him, Michael, if you call loudly." They climbed to the rock. She saw it was vacant. The ends of a few sticks glowed on the stone, pale in their ash crusts. "Hood, Hood," she called, and he said, "Call louder. He has gone far." She answered, "No, I won't call. I wish never to see him." Who lay under the sheer below them, his broken shoulders bulging, his coat in lumps, the starlight regarded, the bone vessel where all the nerves had met for counsel while they were living, and the acts and thoughts been formed was burst open, its gray and white jellies flung on the stones like liquor from a broken flask, mixed with some streamers of blood. The vivid consciousness that waking or dreaming, its 20 years, infallibly felt itself unitary, was now divided. Like the dispersion of a broken hive, the brain cells and rent fragments of cells finding, after their communal festival of life, particular deaths. In their deaths, they dreamed a moment, the unspent chemistry of life resolving its powers, some in the cold star gleam, some in the cooling darkness and the crushed skull. But shine and shade were indifferent to them. Their dreams determined by temperatures, access of air, wetness or dying, as the work of the autolytic enzymes of the last hunger hasted or failed. Yet there appeared, whether by chance or whether from causes in their common origin and recent union, a rhythmic sympathy among the particular dreams. A wave of many minute delicious enjoyments would travel across the spilth. Then a sad fading would follow it. A wave of infinitesimal pains, and a pause, and the pleasures again. These waves both lessened in power and slowed in time, the fragments of consciousness beginning to lapse out of the frailties of life and enter another condition. The strained peace of the rock has no repose. It is wild and shuddering. It travels in the teeth of locked, strained, unimaginable paths. It is full of desire, but the brittle iniquities of pleasure and pain are not there. These fragments now approached what they would enter in a moment, the peace of the earth. And that is Peace of earth, the earth, not a piece. There's another ripped page. Gotta be careful with these books, buddy. You gotta be careful. All right, Brobs, that's all. Goodbye. Good boy.